Something different today on the Public Square. I'm producer Alan Duncan, and if you raised a family in the 1980s, or like me, were being raised in a family in the 1980s, there's a good chance that you watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. For a time, it was the only thing my mother would let me watch. For 31 seasons, Fred Rogers' calm curiosity encouraged children to explore the world around them and that inner world of emotion swirling inside them. Children were important to him because children are important to Jesus. See, Fred was a man of faith. This is something we share in common with Fred Rogers. Our specific outreach to children, Kids on the Square, has just started this year. And we're currently exploring the world of children's book publishing. So children and reaching that next generation is something that's very important to us here at the Public Square. Now, Fred Rogers went into TV because he saw its power and despised some of the negative ways it was being used. He started with the worldview that everyone had worth and made sure that his studies informed his mission, earning a BA in music composition and then studying at Pittsburgh Seminary for a decade, finally earning his degree and being ordained as a Presbyterian minister. He went on to win the Presidential Medal of Freedom and inspire a generation. Today, we're going to hear some behind-the-scenes stories from two of his friends, Lisa Dormire, who worked at Pittsburgh Seminary for 17 years, and Bob Rawsthorne, who played live percussion for the music of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for 30 years. Their memories show the faith and character of the man behind the classic program, and show that he was the same guy whether the cameras were on or off. These are interviews we've been sitting on for 10 years, trying to find the right way to bring them to you. We think now's the time. We'll start with some remarks from Bob Rawsthorne. So now here's the special edition of the Public Square.
I first became involved in it through a friend of mine that was a bass player, Carl McVicker, that we went to college together. It was the late 60s, I want to say 1968 or 9. Carl called me and said, could you come in and do this? That's how I first started. And when I went to the building where the studio is located, there was a little porch one side, and I had to put my equipment up on the porch and then go park my car. I just left the equipment there and wouldn't park the car. When I come back, I saw Fred Rogers. He was in front of me, and he just picked up a couple of those cases and took them inside himself. And I thought, well, how about this? The star of the show, he just picked up the cases and took them. That was Fred. That's how I got started.
I would imagine it was pretty unique for a children's program to have such kind of sophisticated jazz music. What do you think was the motivation behind that? Because that music still holds up today. You could really play that in any setting.
Oh, yeah. Well, it goes back to John Costa.
John Costa being, of course, the musical director for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes, that's true. That's Fred Rogers contacted him about doing this. This was in the 60s someplace. And John said, well, I'm not going to dumb the music down. I'm not going to do it to make sound like kids' music. And Fred said, no, I don't want you to do that. That's why I want you to play. From the very beginning, that's what it was. It was just piano on there. Fred's songs were, he's a prolific songwriter. But almost all those songs were all harmonized by John Costa. And that's what Fred wanted him to do.
I view that decision to go with jazz music in that fashion as a respect or a nod of respect to the children who would be watching the program.
That's exactly what it was. I had a friend on this same subject. Ray was a school teacher, and so he was playing for this elementary class piano music, and he put in some sort of jazz sounding kind of chords, and one of the kids says, oh, that's Mr. Rogers' music. So the kids recognized those chord changes. He wasn't playing one of Fred's tunes, but he was playing those kind of chords, The kids recognized it. Well, we said for a long time we were the only jazz on television, which we were. really, John Costa was, he was one of the best players in the world. I've never heard anybody play better than that. He's a marvelous player. He was a genius. And he and Fred they really had a good friendship besides a business relationship. They were sort of exact opposite personalities. That's a whole other subject there, Al.
How many years did you do the music on the show? How many years were you a part of this?
I did a couple shows in the 60s, and the last thing we did, I looked that up, was in 2001. Okay. So it was over 30 years, Alan, like a long time.
Well, now I know you got to you appeared on camera several times as well, didn't you, over the years?
Yeah, over the years, yeah. And there's one program, I just saw it recently. Somebody had saw it on the YouTube and sent it to me, where he introduced he said, you may wonder where this music's coming from. When you hear the music, we'll hear the musicians. He had the utmost respect for the musicians. He did. He's a musician himself.
Do you know where the music comes from when I sing that song at the beginning of our visit each day? It comes from the musicians who work right here in our television studio. I'll show you. John, Carl, and Bob. And Bobby, would you play your part? It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Oh, I like that, yeah.
He could make you so at ease on the interview. There was nothing to it. You think, well, I'm going to be maybe nervous around the camera. He just leads you right through it. I did one program where I gave Fred a drum lesson. I showed him a couple sort of rudiments of drumming, and then he tried them, and I played for him, and we had a little conversation, and that was it. And after we were finished, producer said, I felt good about this, I have to tell you. The producer said, Fred, we did that whole segment in one take. And Fred said, what do you expect? It was Bobby. That's what he said, which really, was Fred would never be all about him. It would be about somebody else. That was Fred.
There was a time when there was a thought that maybe there wasn't going to be live music on this program, but Fred stepped in. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
They brought in he was sort of a consultant. He said, well, here's a way to cut this music. Here's a way to cut this cost down. Can the opening and the closing. So it's recorded, so it's the same every time. And then these musicians won't have to be in here every day, which was a pretty bad thing for the musicians.
That's not something you want to hear, is it?
You don't want to hear that. But it was Fred Rogers that said, no, we're not going to do that. I don't want to do that myself. I don't want to sing to any recorded music, and I want these people here live. When he did the opening and closing, if you watch those programs, if you watch enough of them, you'll see it's always a little bit different. He did not want to sing songs to a recording. That's like performing with like a chain around your neck. There's no leeway for him to do whatever he wants, stop when he wants, starts when he wants. The musicians could follow him exactly. And the other thing was, I think he was really concerned about the people that worked for him. That ended that whole deal with that consultant. So we were we were proud of Fred for that. He had a song called "I'm Proud of You." And that's what I told him, Fred. We're proud of you.
I'm proud of you, you know that. I hope you do. I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you. I hope that you're as proud as I am. Proud of you, I'm proud of you. I hope that you are proud of you too. I am.
As you might imagine, I think sometimes the phone practically rung off the hook with people trying to get Fred to do commercial kind of jobs, kids cereal commercials and that. But he wouldn't do that. He just wouldn't do it. He stuck to his convictions about what he was doing and didn't want to shake anybody's confidence in him. and he stuck to it. A lot of people would have really caved into the money.
Was Fred's faith a big component in his life in the program? Was that something that was evident or that was picked up on?
Well, Fred went to theological seminary,
Mm-hmm.
and he was an ordained Presbyterian minister. And I think he thought his calling was to take this message to these children.
Now, here's longtime friend Lisa Dormire talking about where some of that Presbyterian minister's calling was honed over the years.
If you meet anybody who went to Pittsburgh Seminary between 1959 and 1969, they'll say, "Oh, I was in seminary with Mr. Rogers," and it was because he was there for such a long period of time. I think he actually attended classes over a period of close to 10 years because he would basically come on his lunch hour and arrange to take one course at a time and kind of work his way through the program. That over the years became more common, but back in the 60s when he was a student, most people did the traditional 3-year track. They were in and they were out, but he was there for a long time. He had a really engaging relationship with several of the professors, and so even though it took him a long time, I don't think it was ever a burden. I think it was really a joy for him to just immerse himself in study in that way with these professors whom he loved so much.
Why do you think it was important to him to say, no, I want to actually stick through this for 10 years and complete seminary?
Well, seminary provides you with kind of a depth of theological understanding that really is difficult to attain in any other environment. And, today, many people would argue that seminary isn't even necessary for a pastor. That if a pastor knows the Bible, has a background in business administration, and is good with people, that those 3 years spent studying at seminary may not make the pastor. But to me, seminary provides just kind of a depth and a base that when the going gets kind of tough, you're still able to theologically articulate your faith. Because I think when you don't really have that grounding, when things do get tough, it's a lot harder to just kind of stay connected to your belief system and your just kind of your theological viewpoint. And I think that's kind of what drove Fred.
Would you say he viewed what he was doing as a ministry then?
Yes. Yeah. And he probably had the largest congregation in Presbyterian history over the years as well. When you think about the millions of children that were part of his parish. His show was theologically grounded, and although it was not transparent, that was really much at the heart of what he was doing. And I think he realized that deep theological study would kind of provide him with that solid foundation that he wanted to be able to communicate through his medium.
I saw him one time. I wanted to tell you this, Alan. One time there was a couple of kids from an inner city school. I think they played violin, these kids. I guess they were nervous too. They were like acting up on the set, and saying like sort of smart-like stuff to Fred.
Oh no.
And so Fred said, okay, we're gonna stop the taping here for a few minutes. And okay, they stopped. What's he gonna do? He takes them like behind a set. Now, what's he saying to these kids? I'd have loved to hear what he was saying. But they come back out, and they were nice as pie. These kids, they did what they were supposed to do, and they did it right.
Wow.
So he straightened them. They're kids like about 8 years old, something like that, 8 or 9, I would think, something like that. They didn't know how to act, but when he was done talking to them, they knew how to act. I always did say, God, I'd really like to hear what he said to them. But he didn't say it in front of everybody. He took them behind a set. He always listened to every word you had to say. I really, in all the years I was there, which was over 30, I don't think I ever heard him, I know I never heard him raise his voice. Like, you know how it is, Alan. You're working with somebody. Somehow, there's going to be some day when something happens, that he never got upset about something, but he knew what he wanted, and he conveyed that in a sort of a, calm, peaceful way. But you knew that that's what he wanted.
Perhaps nothing illustrated that more than the time Fred testified in 1969 before the Senate Subcommittee on Communications, with a lot of funding on the line. Here's an excerpt of that exchange.
All right, Rogers, you got the floor.
Senator Pastore, could I tell you the words of one of the songs which I feel is very important?
Yes.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that the children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children, doing puppets in very personal communication with small groups. What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad you could bite. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
I remember when I was a junior in college, during the summer when I was at Family Communications, I actually had an opportunity to sit in his office with him. He would check in from time to time. He actually wrote my letters of recommendation for seminary, and I was thinking of going to another seminary. And he looked me in the eye, and he said, I really would love to see you consider Pittsburgh, because I think you will find your voice there in a way in which you wouldn't at the other seminaries. That was kind of a pivotal moment in my life. And I'm not sure had I gone to the other seminary that I would have sought ordination, or would I be where I am right now, because being at Pittsburgh really did kind of blossom my world for me. So I'm forever grateful for that moment with him when he challenged me to go find my voice.
Fred always had a employees picnic in the summer. Idlewild Park is a small amusement park not far from Pittsburgh, near Ligonier. They ended up putting a trolley ride in there. He'd invite all the, all employees and everybody at the studio that actually worked on his program. It was great, their families and everything. And Fred was so great with, you hate to bother somebody like that, say, but with him, it didn't seem like you were bothering, because Fred, would you mind getting a picture here with the grandkids? Oh, no, let's line up right over here. So now Fred says, okay, now, Bobby, you get over there with your family, and I'll get a picture of you.
Oh.
So he was. So we line up. He pulls a camera out of his pocket, his own camera, and takes a picture of us. Then about a week later, I got this envelope in the mail, and I could see it was Fred's writing in the unusual handwriting. And so another reason I say that is because he did this himself. He didn't have like a secretary or somebody do it. And I opened it up and said, it's the picture he took of us. And a nice note, I saved it, I framed it. I'm glad I did.
The men and women we honor span the spectrum of achievement. Some are fighters, others are healers. All have left an enduring legacy of hope and courage and achievement. Fred Rogers has proven that television can soothe the soul and nurture the spirit and teach the very young. The whole idea, says the beloved host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, is to look at the television camera and present as much love as you possibly could to a person who needs it. This message of unconditional love has won Fred Rogers a very special place in the heart of a lot of moms and dads all across America.
The White House was a diplomatic corps children's Christmas program.
Okay.
It was a wonderful experience, really, for me. We got in there, and I got to walk all around and look at all those paintings and all that stuff. And then when we were finished, Carl McVicker and I were going to the hotel and coming back with some of the equipment the next day and all that. We were driving. The other people were going to the airport. Anyway, this, like, Army lieutenant comes in and says, "Mr. McVicker, Mr. Rawsthorne, your car is ready." I said to Carl, "Carl, this is the highlight of our lives here. We played at every pump, every saloon, every bad place, you know. Now we're in the White House and they're announcing our name. We're riding in a limo, you know, having drinks, making phone calls, and got like an Army captain driving." Right at that point, we heard Fred Rogers say to Dave Newell, "David, let's not make a habit of this." But that was Fred. That didn't impress him at all. He was glad to be able to do something and help out there. But as far as like himself goes and getting money and treated like that, no. He never had one speck of ego about him. No, he said, "I just like to be in a studio with a trio."
We're nearing the end of our time together, but I wanted to make sure that I included this moment from the time Fred received an honorary doctorate from Bowling Green State University. This clip shows just how important he was to the students there.
Well, I bring greetings from everybody in the neighborhood. Can you imagine how it feels for me to think that maybe you were part of the neighborhood when you were growing up? Thank you for that. You want to sing? Okay. Why don't we sing together? If you'll do it, I'll do it. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
I missed him. He was a mentor and a friend, and you know, he's one of the people who have passed on that I think every day I miss and think about and wish he was still in our world. So we could have used him around for a few more years, I think. He was a saint of our time, for sure.
One of the grandchildren was pretty small. He was collecting these little, sort of these rocks, and he gave them to Mr. Rogers like a present. And Fred says, "Oh, that's so nice, Cole. Thank you very much. I really like these." He puts them in his he had like a sport coat on. He puts them in his pocket, you know. So we saw him later in a parking lot, and he still had the rocks. My wife said, "No, Fred, just throw those rocks over the hill." Oh no, I'm going to keep these. I keep these rocks. I'm going to take them somewhere. He was going to take them home and put them. He said, he truly believed that was like a valuable gift from that kid, because the kid thought it was. Ever run into any people like this in your life? That was Fred.
Thanks for listening to this special edition of The Public Square. Thanks to our guests, Lisa Dormire and Bob Rawsthorne, for sharing their stories of Fred Rogers. We hope this time together, like it has for all of us at The Public Square, inspired you to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.